Good evening to everyone. Welcome to this fourth and final session on our customs litigation and mitigation strategies. I once again welcome my partners Rajat and Ketan and thank them for continuing to be with us, taking out time and sharing their wisdom with us through the past 4 weeks. I want to start off with sharing a little bit about our partners here. Rajat is a founding partner at Taxcraft Advisors LLP. He has experience of more than 16 years in handling indirect taxes, including customs, GST, excise laws, service tax, VAT, central sales tax, FTP, SEZ, and EAU regimes. Rajat has been engaging in assisting numerous clients as regards translationing to GST in India and VAT in the UAE. Rajat has been representing clients and industry bodies before various central and state governments, departments, ministries of commerce, CBIC, GST Council, Road TEP Committee, Drawback Wing, DGFT, Quad tax and policy matters as per government advocacy initiatives. He has also authored several articles in various publications and is a regular speaker at various seminars and conferences in India and in the UAE. Rajat has worked as a partner in direct tax at the Economic Law Practice, a Tier 1 law firm, and he has also worked with other reputed organizations such as PMR Advisors, Reliance Industries Limited, and SpiceJet Limited. Rajat is a chartered accountant and a certified accountant from the USA. He's also a law graduate and has done his bachelor's in commerce from the University of Delhi. So welcome, Rajat. I would now want to share a few words about our other speaker, Ketan Tadsare. Ketan is an associate partner with Taxcraft Advisors and has more than 12 years of post-qualification experience in matters relating to customs, foreign trade policy, GST, central and state excise laws, service tax, and VAT. He has played an active role for various multinational companies who are transitioning into the GST in India and regularly advises clients on customs matters, including various benefits emanating from the foreign trade policy. Ketan is presently engaged in providing advisory and litigation services to various clients in indirect tax space and regularly appears before judicial and quasi-judicial forums. He has also been actively engaged in undertaking review exercises relating to various indirect tax laws, foreign trade policy benefits, and customs procedures for multinational corporations and Indian business houses. Ketan has been involved in making representations before government authorities, including the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Commerce, and DGFT, etc., in relation to tax and trade policy matters for companies and industry associations. Prior to joining Taxcraft Advisors, Ketan has worked with Economic Law Practice and Lakshmi Kumaran and Sridharan. Ketan is an advocate with an LLB from the University of Pune. So welcome, Ketan, here. Okay, and just a quick recap about this fourth, the run-up to this fourth and the final session. We have so far covered 3 separate sessions, starting from the emerging controversies in the state space of customs litigation, wherein we spoke about the controversies in the space of classification, valuation, and export incentives. Thereafter, we looked at the landscape of customs audits, and we looked at various types of audits and the framework in which the audits are being undertaken and are going to be undertaken in the times to come. We've also elaborately talked in section 3 about the investigation process by the customs authorities. And we walked through various kinds of enforcement stroke area investigating agencies under the customs. And now in today's last and final session, we want to talk about the various forums where different levels of litigations happen in the space of customs. And we are going to talk about the forums that where various kinds of litigations happen and how to handle those litigations. In today's session, we are going to start off with discussing the traditional forums for litigation under the customs. I'm taking a moment to put the slide on the board. All right. Okay. So we will be talking today about traditional forums for litigation under the customs. We'll be dwelling deeper into the adjudication process once the audit or investigation is over by the customs authorities. We'll be walking through the important nuances of appellate proceedings. One important aspect of any litigation under tax or non-tax law is the limitation. So with respect to customs, we are going to talk in detail about the limitation provisions under the custom. Another important nuance around litigation is the pre-deposits. We'll be taking you through in detail about what kind of pre-deposits are required to be made for a taxpayer to litigate at various levels. One important litigation strategy is at times to reach out directly to the High Court or the Supreme Court. In such cases, we are going to talk about what are the situations which allow for you to bypass the regular litigation process and actually reach out to the High Court. We will also be talking about certain alternate litigation forums towards the end of the session, and we'll be closing today's session with some best practices to effectively handle litigation under the customs. I will now invite Rajat to take the session from this point on and take us through the various traditional forums of litigation under the customs.
Welcome. Thank you so much, Poonam, for this elaborate explanation as to what we will cover in today's session. And thank you so much for the kind introduction as well. Thank you so much to our viewers for being there today for this concluding episode of this 4 series round that we have done on custom matters. So could we have the slide deck, please? Yes. So as Poonam did say, the coverage today is going to be around the whole spectrum of litigation qua the customs matters. This litigation that we are going to speak about, the strategy, the various forums, what are the best practices, so on and so forth. This pertains to, of course, custom matters as well as the FTP matters. Yeah. So first of all, let's reiterate on what we have discussed earlier in last session and last to last session. We spoke about the distinction between audit and investigation. And we did speak that, so far as audit is concerned, it's a regular regime. So under the post-clearance audits, you have a mandate from the custom authorities where they will come. And, there are 2-3 kind of audits which are simultaneously keep on happening. One is the premise-based audit, wherein they can come to our office, do a detailed, thorough analysis of the 4-5 years past transactions from an import and export perspective. At the same time, they may also audit all the processes that, which are there so far as our premises are concerned. Effectively, the internal controls, the process of internal audit, so on and so forth, so that if at all we are making any mistakes in custom compliance, they are not repeated on a again and again basis. So we can take a leaf out of those mistakes, and those should effectively be corrected in the system. Could we please come to slide number 5? Thank you so much. So clearly, so far as audits are concerned, you have theme-based audits, premises-based audit. Some are focused on particular transactions, whereas others are, focused on particular industries and areas. So that's audit. So far as investigations are concerned, whether authorities have got certain tips basis which, uh, they are coming to you as a player in that particular sector or industry, and that is where the element of investigation comes. We did speak in last sessions as well. Typically the authorities are DRI, SIIB, DGGI, so on and so forth. Yeah. Now so far as
Sorry, Rajat, I'll pause you here. Looks like our slides are not visible to the audience. Ketan, can you just have a look? If it's even in on my screen, I can't see the right slide.
Rajat, are
You
these
can
visible
stop.
to you?
Okay.
Rajat, are these visible to you?
they are visible to me, but we are on slide 2 here, and it's not also
Okay.
full screen is not available.
That's
If we
right.
could do a redo of this and get it on slide number 5, please. Yeah. So clearly, so far as investigations are concerned, there's an element of suspicion. Either in the same sector, somebody has dealt with a particular transaction in a way which is not acceptable to the authorities. We have spoken about SCIS being obtained by CHAs and CFAs in the past, C&F agents, and how on certain transactions where they were getting revenue in INR, even there they had procured the SCIS certificates. So these are some of the cases where investigations may our industry or particular plant may be chosen for the investigation. So usually there's an element of surprise in investigations vis-a-vis audits, where there's a set procedure. You will be given a notice. Typically 15 to 30 days are given to you in order to do the preparation, so on and so forth. So so far as audit is concerned, there's a separate wing, there's a separate commissionerate who has the responsibility to undertake the audits. But what is common in audits and investigation is that there may be certain issues where the assessee and the authorities, they are on the same page. Either the authorities get convinced that there's no liability on this particular aspect, or the assessee may get convinced that yes, there is some lacuna in the overall stuff that they have done, be it wrongful classification or undervaluation of goods, so on and so forth. So they may agree that we agree to pay the duty and interest, so on and so forth. But at the same time, there could be typical issues where they do not agree on one point. Assessee may have a point that they have classified the goods under the right classification, under the right HSN code, whereas the authorities are of the different view. So these cases are typically where the SCNs are issued. At the same time, even in instances where both the parties have agreed, for levying penalty on assessees, SCNs are issued. So whether it is an audit, whether it is an investigation, or whether it is a case picked up, in the RMS, which is risk management system, whether you are importing the goods from outside the country or you're exporting your goods outside the country. So under the RMS, your case may be picked and certain queries may be posed to you. For example, the goods you are exporting out of the country, authorities may feel that it comes under the SCOMET regulations and you have not adhered to those. So these are some of the cases where in RMS also some of the queries may come your way, and if you are unable to satisfy the officer with the explanations and citing the relevant law, that why you should not be covered under the SCOMET regulations. So these are some of the instances where all these issues give rise to issuance of an SCN. So be it an audit where you are not agreeing on a particular point, or where if you have agreed with the authorities on a particular point for levy of penalty. Likewise, under investigations also, where you do not agree with the authorities, for levy of duty, interest and penalties. And in cases where you have agreed and paid the duty and interest, there also for imposition of penalty, this can give rise to issuance of a show cause notice by the authorities. Now, so far as the authorities are concerned, what in the process of audit, investigation, and while issuing these clarifications or queries that they pose to you, what they seek to do is they gather all the facts, from the assessee. They will also, take statements from the relevant people from the assessees, plus the relevant law, plus, the relevant jurisprudence, which is applicable on the, case at hand, so far as authorities are concerned. All of this is taken into account by the authorities in order to issue a show cause notice. And as soon as, you have issuance of a show cause notice, the adjudication process in a way begins. Yeah. If we could, come to the next slide, Ketan. Okay, so I'll take a pause here before we jump into the SCN and the related nuances there too. We will, take a pause, and I will, hand over the dice to Poonam to take us through the poll question number 1 for our audience.
Thanks, Rajat. Ashita, can we have the first poll question, please? Okay, so the first poll question is that whether all the audits and investigations culminate into a show cause notice. Okay, good. Rajat, the audience seems to be loving you. There are some hearts flying on the screen. Another maybe 10 seconds to go. Awesome.
Maybe they are falling in love with the question you have postponed.
Looks like. Okay, so great. Thank you, everyone. So, Rajat, we have 27% saying yes and 73% saying no.
Okay, so maybe I would say, it was a tricky one. It's, partly yes, partly no. So, yes, in some of the instances, in some of the issues from the audit and investigation, where the assessee and authorities are not on the same page, that may give rise to an SCN. And there may be situations that, initially investigation was initiated, but eventually the authorities perhaps have not found anything. And, if there is no issue, if there is nothing, there is no tax evasion, or the authorities believes that, there is no tax evasion, these are typically the instances which may not give rise to an SCN. Yeah. So it was a tricky one. Perhaps a third choice could have been there, but nonetheless. So, we were speaking about audits, we were speaking about investigations, and we were speaking about any other queries, in cases which are picked up by RMS while the importation and exportation is on. So clearly, so far as authorities are concerned, what they do in this process of, knowing the assessee, knowing the business, knowing the transaction in hand, and marrying that particular transaction with the relevant law and jurisprudence, they get their facts sorted. They know their relevant law and also the relevant cases. Basis all of this, they will stitch a show cause notice. Yeah. Point number 3, I think we need not comment on that. Many a times we have seen that so many, a situation arises where we believe that, there's no case at all, but still a show cause notice is issued. So, somewhere down the line, authorities also have to meet their targets. At times you may say, they are working with a biased mind, so on and so forth. Any terminology can be used for this. So many a times, it is seen that, a particular SCN has been issued with authorities' eyes, fixed on revenue, how they can increase their revenue. So therefore, many a times people say, we took a view from this, how a show cause notice has been issued. So show cause notice is nothing but, they want us to demonstrate as to why, duty should not be levied, interest should not be, charged from you, and penalty should not be imposed. So it's a perfect case for us to go and represent ourselves, whether internally or with external help, with all force, with a strong research. And after having done a strong, drafting, we have to go and present our case before the authorities and tell them that, so far as our case is concerned, there's no misclassification. If it's an issue pertaining to classification, what we have done is the right classification, and why the classification being suggested by you is not the right one. So on and so forth, likewise in the case of valuation and in the case of, export benefits as well. So, one thing is very, very critical, the timelines, etc. Within 2 years, typically just show cause notice can be issued. If the larger period of limitation is involved, which Ketan will take us through in great detail, where the department is coming up with evidence that, fraud, misrepresentation, suppression of facts were into play. So there you could have a show cause notice issued for last 5 years as well. Nonetheless, once the show cause notice is issued, you have, given a strong reply to that, and thereafter, you typically do ask for, a personal hearing. You go represent your case, in the best manner possible. The outcome could be two: whether it will be a positive result for the assessees, which more often than not is not to be found. In more than 99% of the cases, a negative, order in original is issued. If a negative order in original has been issued in your favor, then of course that gives rise to the adjudication process. Appellate forums, come into play there. So this is where, we will request Ketan to take us through, all the forums where, we can file an appeal, in which scenario, where to go and file an appeal, so on and so forth, the provisions relating to pre-deposit, etc., etc. So clearly, while, replying to SCN, there are some other points that we need to take care of, whether the SCN is vague, whether, there are case laws, which, clearly have settled that particular issue where, this issue pertains to. So all those things have to be taken into account. Personal hearing is typically that, you will ask for. And the idea is to present your case at the strongest, in the strongest form possible at the first level itself, so that, all the facts, all the relevant evidences that you may need to use at a later fora, are presented in the best scenario possible. But as I did say, at the SCN level, when the order in original is issued, it is very rare to be seen that, the order in original is issued in favor of the assessee, not because the case is not strong, but many a times because of, certain other biases as well. Yeah. If it is a scenario where the the order in original is positive, which is issued by the adjudication authority, then there's a a procedure of committee of commissioners also, which they sit together, and they may also decide that so far as this matter is concerned, perhaps a positive order should not have been issued, and they may again refer it back for reconsideration. So these are, or they may file an appeal against it. So these are some of the nuances that we have to be aware of while, tackling the adjudication proceedings. So I will pause at this point in time and, give the dice to Ketan, and Ketan will take us through various appellate forums and the procedures relating thereto. And thereafter, Poonam and I will sum up the best practices in the realm of adjudication and appellate proceedings. Yeah. With this, I pause. Thank you, Ketan. Kindly take it up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rajat. Thank you so much for setting out the bifurcation of these steps. It all begins with audit and investigation, then gets into adjudication mode, which is about issuance of show cause notice, and then followed by filing of a reply, which then ends at issuance of order in original. And then what happens thereafter is all appellate proceedings, to say it that way. So these are three sections. One, audit and investigation. Second is adjudication. And anything that happens later on is your appellate proceedings. So with this, I'm going to cover a little bit about appellate proceedings. But as we progress into this, I have one poll question to begin with this session. So may I request the team to pop up the poll question, please?
Okay, the poll question is, can new facts be introduced in an appeal before the High Court? All right, so 5 more seconds to go. Great. Thank you everyone for participating. Ketan, we have 71% saying yes and 29% saying no.
Okay, that's interesting. I think perhaps I can clear the clouds out there. See, when it comes to tax matters, show cause notice, your first appeal, that is your commissioner appeals level, and the next appellate stage, that is tribunal. These are the only 3 forums where you can produce a new fact. You are not allowed to produce any new fact in front of High Court in an appellate jurisdiction. So you have to be very careful that when you are drafting a reply to show cause notice, like Rajat had said, that you have to be very categorical about creating a platform, because what happens at the adjudication level is going to create a foundation for all the appellate proceedings later on. So all the relevant facts, all the submissions that you want to take, you have to make sure that these are covered at the show cause notice level itself. If not, then perhaps at the commissioner appeals and at tribunal level. And thereafter, you have to be very clear that no new fact is being introduced after you cross the tribunal and approach before High Court. So that is the very idea. Now, with this clarification, perhaps we can move on to with a bit of a confusing aspect of how really appellate forums are arranged in terms of hierarchy. So there is an authority called commissioner, and then there is an authority called commissioner appeals. The commissioner adjudication, as we simply write it, is the authority who issues the show cause notice and then issues the order in original. Typically, any dispute that has the duty demand involved in it is in excess of 50 lakh rupees. It's something that comes in the purview of a commissioner, and commissioner issues the order in original. In a case where this order is issued in this fashion by the commissioner, then the appeal lies directly to the tribunal. Now there is another category. Say if the dispute involves an amount that's below 50 lakh rupee, then it has been seen that assistant commissioner or a deputy commissioner or an additional commissioner typically issues the show cause notice, adjudicates the matter, and issues its order in original. In that case, the appeal lies first to commissioner appeals. Now he is an equivalent authority to the commissioner, but functions in the capacity of an appellate officer. And the first order issued by this commissioner appeals, also referred to as order in appeal, can be appealed against before tribunal. So for simply put, matters that involve an amount below 50 lakh rupees, you have 3 different steps. First is either assistant commissioner, deputy commissioner, or additional commissioner. Then second is commissioner appeals, and then third is tribunal. For a matter that involves a dispute worth 50 lakh or above, there are only 2 steps. A commissioner looks after the adjudication and the matter is appealable directly before tribunal. So that's a simple difference between why there are 3 different authorities when commissioner appeals is involved, and just 2 when a commissioner of adjudication is involved, right? Typically in this entire hierarchy, as you would see on this slide, there are 4 appellate authorities that one can refer to. The first one, commissioner appeals, as I just explained. Then there is appellate tribunal, as we now refer to as CSTAT, and earlier as CGAT. Then there is High Court, and then there is Supreme Court. So this is exactly the hierarchy in which the appeal mechanism moves on. First commissioner appeals, if at all it is involved, then tribunal, then High Court, and then Supreme Court. Their powers are derived from the various sections under the Customs Act itself that we have also referred over this slide. Now, an important aspect of the interplay between which matter will proceed in which fashion in the entire hierarchy. We'll spend a little more time on this because this is a little critical aspect. Now, if the adjudicating authority is a commissioner, like I mentioned, the matter will go directly to the tribunal first. Okay. If an order is issued by tribunal relates to classification or valuation, then an appeal against that order lies directly to Supreme Court. In any other issue which does not involve classification or valuation, an appeal lies before High Court, and from High Court to Supreme Court. So to sum it up, you can say when an issue of classification and valuation is involved, your ladder to Supreme Court involves 1 step less. High Court is not considered in that whole system. For any other dispute, you have to go through commissioner, tribunal, High Court, and then Supreme Court. 4 stages of it. All right. Now comes the second leg. If the adjudicating authority is a subordinate to commissioner, that is to say assistant commissioner, deputy commissioner, or an additional commissioner, as we discussed, the first appeal will lie to Commissioner Appeals if the issue involves certain specified aspects such as duty drawback. Then the order issued by Commissioner Appeals would be appealable to Joint Secretary Revisionary Authority. Now, Revisionary Authority is an arm of the central government. It is not an arm of the judiciary. It is not an arm of the revenue department. It is a representative of the central government. Against the decision taken by Revisionary Authority, you do not have any appellate mechanism. So what is the recourse? You file a writ petition, which is an inherent power in the hands of High Court and Supreme Court. We will take a deeper look at what writ jurisdiction is in some later slides. And from that writ jurisdiction before High Court, you get to appeal before Supreme Court. So this is the hierarchy. Now, let's take one more example where we are not really dealing with those miscellaneous issues where Revisionary Authority is involved. The hierarchy is again simple. The officer below Commissioner, that is Assistant Commissioner, Deputy Commissioner, and Additional Commissioner, from them to Commissioner Appeals, from them to Tribunal, from them, again, if it relates to classification and valuation, then one step less, we will go to Supreme Court directly. If it relates to any other aspect, we go to High Court, and from then to Supreme Court. So this is how this entire movement of appellate mechanism functions. Now, moving on to the next part, limitation. It's a very critical aspect because every time you want to approach limitation, approach an appellate authority, you have to make sure that you are doing that in a certain specified time frame. You don't have all the time on the earth. You just have to make sure you have to analyze your orders, you have to analyze your own position and make a decision of whether you want to approach before authorities or not. It's more like a time frame mechanism to make sure that the matters are not left pending at all. So under section 128, if you want to approach an authority of Commissioner Appeals against an order issued by the lower officers, then we get a duration of 60 days. In case of CSTAT, you get a duration of 3 months. That is to say, if you want to approach CSTAT, you get a duration of about 3 months from the date of communication of order. It's not the date of issuance, but the communication of order, which means if on a particular day an order has been issued by the lower authority and it takes about a week's time to reach to you, then that week will not be considered. It is the date of communication. The day you receive the order is the day this duration is triggered. Then when you want to approach a High Court, you have typically a duration of 180 days. And then when you want to approach Supreme Court, you typically have a duration of 90 days. All right. So this is the overall mechanism. Now, if you see in point number 1, 3, and 4, we refer to number of days, while in point number 2, we refer to 3 months per se. There is a very subtle difference. The difference is when we speak of months, you don't have to count the number of days. There could be a February month involved in it in a leap year, perhaps just with 28 days or maybe 29 otherwise. There could be months with 30 days in it or 31 days in it, and all of that would not make any difference. All you have to see is whether when the month is triggered, the duration of month is triggered, you go to the next same date of the next month and to the next and to the next to find out that all 3 months, to find out what is exactly the duration of what is exactly the time frame of these 3 months. While in all the other cases, you have to count the number of days. If in a month there are 28 days, then only 28 days will be counted. If there are 29 days, then only 29 days will be counted. So that is the only difference between point number 2, where we refer to 3 months, and all the other provisions where we refer to number of days. Right? Now, when we go before appeal, when we go into appellate mechanisms, broadly, we can divide the whole era of pre-deposit into 2 segments. Pre-deposit is something that revenue wants us to pay before the authorities, before we get into any appellate mechanisms. It is mainly to ensure that revenue's interest is secured and that we are not simply fighting the matter frivolously. So before 2014, there used to be all right. So before we begin, get into further depth, I would like to pop up this poll question number 3, and if the team could please.
Anshika, let's have poll question number 3, please. All right, the question is, can an appeal be filed without pre-deposit?
I'm hoping for a higher percentage answering the right option since I have spelled out a few of the hints out of that.
All right, another 5 seconds to go. Okay, so Ketan, we have 20% saying yes and 80% saying no.
Oh, great. So 80% of the folks were listening to me that duration. So yes, you are right. The pre-deposit as we speak in this era is a mandatory pre-deposit. There are certain exceptions to that. And I will of course speak about that. But mainly as a thumb rule, what we can say that pre-deposit is a mandatory thing, and without paying that pre-deposit, you cannot get into appellate proceedings. So that's the broad idea right now. Now, as I was saying, pre-deposit, the concept of pre-deposit can be split mainly into two eras. First one is 2014, and before that, when there used to be, a separate hearing that could take place to decide whether firstly pre-deposit is payable or not, and secondly, if the answer is yes, then how much pre-deposit needs to be paid. The possibility was the pre-deposit could be entirely waived off if there was a prima facie strong case in favor of the assessee. The criteria was it has to be a prima facie case. It need not have to be proved. The second option was also in favor of revenue, where the appellate authorities could actually order the payment of entire duty demand as 100% of the duty demand as pre-deposit. So that possibility existed. So you could get a waiver, say 0% of pre-deposit to the absolute non-waiver of 100% of pre-deposit. That possibility existed. But in 2014, there came an amendment in these provisions, because of which we now come to a concept called mandatory pre-deposit. All right. So mandatory pre-deposits are typically a percentage prescribed under the law itself. That percentage, when and how it to be computed with with either the duty demand or penalty is also prescribed under the law. So the idea is, whenever there is a demand of duty, then imposition of penalty, then determination of pre-deposit is actually a function of a percentage to be multiplied on duty demand. Now the law says at the first appellate level, you have to pay a pre-deposit of 7.5%. Assuming a case where the dispute involves duty payment and penalty, then the pre-deposit is 7.5% of the duty alone. You do not have to take into consideration the penalty portion. All right. The second option is, if there is a dispute that surrounds only with the penalty, then you have to compute that percentage with penalty alone, because there is no duty in existence. So only 7.5% of the penalty is what is payable to you. Now, with this understanding, as it looks fairly easy, I'll just come with a very quick and live example. As a matter of fact, I was today itself before the tribunal dealing with this matter, where there was a case where penalty is huge. Penalty is to an extent of 10 crore rupee, and the duty demand is only to an extent of 10.5 lakh rupee. Now, how come a situation like this arises is that there was a claim of duty drawback worth 10 crore rupee, of which just 10 lakh rupee was granted, and the whole issue is before now tribunal in appeal. So pre-deposit had to be computed as per the law says, as a multiplier of the duty demanded, which is the drawback that needs to be paid back to the government. So pre-deposit was computed only limited to rupees 10 lakh. That was the drawback that needs to be refunded. And while the revenue is saying that you have to pay the duty on an entire volume of penalty. So this is how this is where the whole matter is. And there do exist situations where the penalty is much higher than the duty demand. And in those situations, what we have to do is we have to stick to the duty demand, and we have to plead that pre-deposit is payable only on the duty demand portion. So that is one classic example. And like I was saying, that there are certain exceptions for pre-deposit. pre-deposits, and those relate to matters of drawback and refunds. Now, because these disputes relate to something that taxpayers claim from the government, there is nothing that is payable by a taxpayer to the government, and there is no interest that revenue has to secure out of it, because there is nothing that has gone out from the revenue's pocket altogether. So in those cases, pre-deposit need not be paid, although the whole issue is in dispute before the adjudication or before the appellate forums. So these are certain exceptions that we have to keep in mind. Now, speaking of the quantum of pre-deposit, the first appellate forum requires a pre-deposit of 7.5%, and the second appellate forum requires a pre-deposit of 10%. Now, in case the 10% pre-deposit could become a possibility only when the first order has been issued by an assistant commissioner, deputy commissioner, or an additional commissioner. That is the only scenario when you approach the second appellate authority, approach the tribunal as a second appellate authority. And even in that case, when you're paying a pre-deposit of 10%, the initial 7.5% that you may have paid at the first appellate level is you get a set off of that. So when you end up paying only the balance of 2.5% at the second appellate level. Now, this whole pre-deposit requirement exists only up to the tribunal level. And as you get into the further appellate forums of High Court and Supreme Court, there is no requirement of making pre-deposit. So this is a little bit about how and when you need to pre-deposit and how much you need to pay pre-deposit as such. With that, we come to another aspect called writ petition. And as I was saying, that this is an inherent power vested with High Court and Supreme Court. These are the powers when courts can take up the cognizance when there is no particular provision, when there is no statutory framework that exists to take care of a certain issue. The Constitution said that High Court and Supreme Court could be competent authorities, competent judicial forums, where all these issues can be taken up as an inherent power of the court. Now, we will come up to another and perhaps the last poll question number 4, if I may request the team to pop it up. So can a writ be filed despite availability of alternate efficacious remedy? That is the question.
All right, another 5 seconds to go. Okay, Ketan, so we have 71% saying yes and 29% saying no.
Okay, all right, perfect. So we will move on to the concept of alternate efficacious remedy as well now. Before we just take a look at what exactly the writs are typically referred to as. So there are 5 types of writs that courts typically issue. First is habeas corpus. Now these are all Latin terms, so I'll just take a quick second to explain what they literally mean and how they can be exercised. The first is habeas corpus. It literally means present the body. What it means is you have to, the court orders a particular individual to be brought before it to make sure or to find out the reality of the matter and to make sure that the justice is delivered. This could be relevant from the tax point of view, wherever there is perhaps an unlawful detention, there is an unlawful detention of an individual, and court wants to examine the lawfulness of it. It can request, or rather it can order the authorities to produce that individual before the court so that the reality of the matter can be verified. Then comes the mandamus. Mandamus is literally means we command. The writ is issued in order issued to order the public officials who have failed to perform his duty or refuse to do his duty. So typically, whenever there is a lapse on part of the executives to perform their duties, the court has the power to direct them to perform those. Then there is certiorari, which literally means to remain informed, to be informed. This is a writ which is issued in case of excess or lack of jurisdiction. So whenever there is, so this is also a writ issued by a higher court to lower court or tribunals, ordering them to transfer a case pending with them or quash their orders. So whenever a particular order has been issued without authority or in excess or in excess of their authority, then that particular order is ordered by the high courts or Supreme Courts to be quashed, to be nullified. Then there is an writ called prohibition, which literally means to forbid, and as it is self-explanatory, the court has the power to prohibit a particular action or a particular officer to take certain action. And the last is quo warranto, which literally means by what authority or warrant. It is a writ by which the High Court has the power to question an action and to figure out what has been the authority to initiate or take that action. So court can question the very authority under which the action had been taken up. So these are the kinds of writs, and the power that and Article 32 and Article 226 of the Constitution of India is where High Courts and Supreme Courts derive these powers from. Now, coming back to the issue of alternate efficacious remedy. It's a general principle that a writ jurisdiction can be invoked only when there is an absence of other remedies. If you do not have any appellate remedy, if you do not have any adjudication available at your disposal, then only you go before the High Court under the writ jurisdiction, asking them to take cognizance. Now, this being said, because this is an inherent power vested in the High Courts and Supreme Courts, it is their discretion. It is their discretion that they get to decide. They will decide whether they want to take up a particular writ petition despite availability of alternate efficacious remedy. So this is where the statutory framework is. Although in 99% of the cases, or perhaps even more, you would find that a writ petition will get quashed because of the availability of alternate efficacious remedy. And this is only to ensure that the valuable time of High Courts and Supreme Courts is not wasted while there exists certain other forums to take care of a dispute. But if court thinks that this particular issue requires their own attention and is certainly a significant one, then they may take up the writ petition despite availability of alternate efficacious remedy. A live example could be seen. We have been, hearing into even the mainstream media of a 21,000 crore matter being fought by Gamescraft, in which show cause notice has been challenged in a writ jurisdiction before the High Court itself. So the show cause notice is not being adjudicated by a commissioner, but it is actually being taken up before the High Court directly, and that has happened by way of a writ petition. So this could be made out as one example. Now, this is typically, we saw adjudication mechanism, we saw appellate mechanism, we also saw the writ jurisdiction of the courts and limitations of the various forums. With that, we come now to an alternate approach of the dispute, which is alternate forums. Now, it is not always required that when a show cause notice is issued, you keep on adjudicating that, you go through all the pain of adjudication, then first appeal, then second appeal, then High Court, Supreme Court, all of this, which takes the entire life cycle could span, anywhere between 10 years to 12 years, which in a country which is riddled with pendency of litigation. An alternate forum always is an option that is worth considering. Now, first option that I want to speak of is your authority of advance ruling. Now, typically, authority of advance ruling helps you understand the position of law from the department's perspective well in advance. You can file an application before these authorities, asking them a question about a transaction that perhaps have already been undertaken and has not yet scrutinized, or a transaction that is foreseen in nearer future, so that you get clarity well in advance. When an advance ruling is issued, it is binding on the applicant and the jurisdictional officer alone. It is not binding on any other authority or any other taxpayer. But you may always see it as having a persuasive value, because once the revenue or once the advance ruling authorities have taken a particular position in a particular transaction, then they are most likely to carry the same position in other transactions taken up by other assessees as well. So although it may not have a binding force, we certainly can say that this has a very high persuasive force. One downside of this is, again, long pendency. Like I said, it takes anywhere between these days about a year or a little more than that. to file the application, go through all the process and get the ruling get ruling issued by these authorities. And the pendency has only increased during non-operational benches during the lockdown period. So that has been one issue. And secondly, because the authorities sitting on the advanced ruling diocese are typically revenue officers, so there's a likelihood that the rulings would be revenue biased. But one smart way of using these rulings is also if to create a level playing field, like I said, because it has a very persuasive value. And if you feel that there is some unfair competition happening at taking some unfair being taken some unfair advantage by some competitor, you can always go before the authorities for your own sake and find out whether what you are doing is correct or not. And perhaps when that issue is addressed for your own self, you can fairly be assured that the same approach perhaps will be taken up for other taxpayers as well. So that could be one way of looking at advanced ruling authorities. Now the next aspect is policy relaxation committee. This is a very important forum so far as importers and exporters are concerned. Whenever there is a scheme of foreign trade policy involved, it comes with its own requirements of regulations and other difficulties. There are export obligations, then there are export obligation periods and multiple compliances associated with it. And whenever there is a lapse, minor lapse, or there is genuine concern of fulfilling those export obligations within the given period, then you can always approach the policy relaxation committee. You can with open hands tell them the ground reality and request for a relaxation or a lenient treatment. So this is a policy relaxation committee that you can always keep in mind whenever you are speaking about foreign trade policy related benefits. Moving on, we can also speak about settlement commission. Settlement commission is typically again a forum where you figure out, after issuance of show cause notice, you figure out that there is really not much of a merit into the case, and the fact that you really appreciate the fact that there has perhaps been a lapse or not. And despite that, or even to say, even if you do not want to admit the guilt in that show cause notice, you can always say that irrespective of what the merits of the issues are, just to make sure that you do not get up into a long litigation process, you approach the settlement commission, you agree to pay the duty demand along with interest, and perhaps get away with the penalty and the possibilities of prosecution. So this is a forum where you have to first understand whether what is the risk appetite for you to continue with the litigation, and if the answer is perhaps in the negative side, then you could always consider settlement commission where you have weak merits of the case. Now again, there is a certain time frame when you can approach settlement commission. You can do that once the show cause notice has been issued, but before an adjudication order has been issued. Once the adjudication order has been issued, the findings crystallize your guilt, your liability to pay the duty along with imposition of penalty, you lose out on the chance of approaching settlement commission. So making sure that you analyze the entire situation and approach settlement commission before issuance of adjudication order is really important. With that, we come with perhaps the last part of the alternate forum, and that is amnesty scheme. We all have seen that, time and again under various statutes, amnesty schemes are being issued. The idea behind these amnesty schemes is for revenue to unlock the revenue locked into those disputes for a substantially long duration. These are the schemes where typically you get a waiver of part waiver of making duty payment. You get concession in that. You may get concession in the interest portion, waiver of penalty. And a similar kind of benefits can be offered by the respective authority that is administering the law. So from scheme to scheme, the benefits availed out of these schemes will certainly differ. And whenever these schemes are issued, it's worthy of your time to say whether that scheme is applicable to you and whether you have a good cause to approach those schemes. So these are four of the alternate forums that we wanted to discuss with you all. And perhaps with this, I would now request Rajat ji and Poonam ji to take up the best practices that are involved in the litigation proceedings.
Thank you, Ketan. And I noticed Ketan hijacks most part of our section. So why don't we hear out Rajat? Rajat, take us through the last bit, please.
Thank you, Poonam. Thank you, Ketan. So, while all these pointers have been discussed during the presentation itself, we thought, it will be worthwhile to put them together for the benefit of all. So, first of all, facts. So, as Ketan very categorically said that, facts are the backbone of any pleading. So, it is so very essential that, we should have, clear understanding of the facts, and they should be, articulated in a very simple manner. All and only relevant facts have to be articulated wherever possible in chronological order, and wherever there are any relevant document, annexure, etc., which can corroborate those facts, they must definitely be forming the part of the overall pleadings. Be it the reply of show cause notice or at a later point in time, while we are defending ourselves before Commissioner Appeals, CSTAT, or the higher fora. So clearly, very clearly, we have to lay down the facts. Number one. Number two, the legal research has to be very, very strong. So which judgment has been used as a ratio, in the order in original or in the show cause notice, which judgment has only been used as an as a dicta. So which only an observation or maybe a passing remark has been given. Which are the judgments which have been referred or relied upon, and how we can distinguish them. So very, very critical an analysis and a thorough investigation of this needs to be done. Thorough reading, and thereafter a detailed research needs to be done, and only then you can distinguish the judgments which have been relied upon in the SCN or in order in original, as the case may be. Yeah, so very, very critical. Again, on point of law, understanding the grievance with great certainty, with great clarity, is so very critical. Once you understand the issue, the allegations, etc., only then you can put across your viewpoint and use the point of law to your advantage. So how to interpret, which are the judgments which can better help me interpret a particular ruling. If say we are talking about Rule 14 of Senate Credit Rules 2004, so then which are the judgments which can help us, whether it's a and or which is important. So all of those nuances have to be very critically examined first, and then we have to find the remedy. We have to find the relevant judgments which can bail us out. Apart from that, the drafting has to be done in a very simple and lucid manner, so that the other person understands it in the most clear manner. The flow of the document has to be very, very concise and self-explanatory. Many a times we have seen, while everything has been done to the best of one's ability, but the proofreading, etc., sometime we leave out. So that also needs to be done in a very, very precise and methodical manner, so that whatever reference errors, etc., have been done, they can be taken care of. The citations of the judgments that we are referring to and using for distinguishing vis-a-vis what the authorities had relied upon. So citations also need to be taken care of very precisely. Your paper book, etc., proofreading has to be done properly, and the paper book that you are preparing, all the annexure, etc., have to be done in a very methodical manner. In some of the before some of the forums, you can only print the document on one side and not the other side. Before some of the forums, you have to use the legal size paper and not A4. So these are all some of the practical questions, along with strong facts, strong legal research, and a good drafting. These are some of the ancillary things that we have to take note of and should be implemented while we are drafting and presenting our pleadings before the authorities. Any other pointer, Poonam, Ketan, as you suitably find, you may refer.
Sure. Thank you, Rajat. Would just want to add a couple of more aspects to what Rajat said. When it comes to researching, it's very critical that the rulings, the backup of statutory provisions, and the relevant instructions, circulars, notifications are relied upon meticulously. At times, producing wrong documents and not accurately analyzing whether a particular order is to be considered as a High Court order or Supreme Court order understanding around that becomes relevant, and producing right documents relevant to the relevant period for which the matter pertains is also another aspect that one needs to keep in mind. And I would like to sum it up with just one more point. These days, it looks like a fashion to write pages and pages of document of submissions. What we would really suggest is that be precise, be clear, complete, and make your submissions in a way that your each fact is put on record, which is relevant, and your legal aspects are explained well. Rather than actually burdening the court with too much of an information which may not be relevant, it's always good to just keep your submissions precise, crisp, clear. So that with that, I would like to conclude our today's series. We are already past almost 5 minutes over the time. We would really look forward to being in interaction with all of you. You've been a lovely audience, and we would look forward to receiving your feedback, whether you found these sessions useful, relevant, any improvement areas you would like to suggest to us, the frequency, the structure that we followed, anything that you would like to share with us, please do that, and we would look forward to having more sessions in future. Ketan and Rajat, you are welcome to say if you want to say anything before we complete.
No, thank you so much, Poonam. Thank you so much, Taxmann team, for giving us this opportunity. And thank you so much for all the viewers, the audience, for being patient with us. And as Poonam said, any suggestion, any feedback is most welcome. The idea is how we can improve to serve you guys better. Thank you so much.